They said humans were soft, fragile, emotionally unstable. Our galactic neighbors looked down on us with amused superiority, mocking our short lifespans, our patchy biology, and our chaotic, disorganized civilization. We were the newest entrants into the galactic concord, a union of hyper-advanced species that prized logic, longevity, and perfection. And we were the joke of it. The first time humanity attended a Concord summit on Nouther Prime, our delegation was met with a chorus of nervous giggles and polite mockery. The Zaraki delegates, a tall, four-armed reptilian species with calcified brain plating, offered us synthetic spine supports as a gift. "We heard yours are notoriously weak," their ambassador hissed with a toothy grin. The Marthek, ethereal beings made entirely of photosensitive gas, tried to explain interstellar diplomacy to our diplomats using finger paint illustrations. Because surely, humans couldn't grasp galactic protocol. The worst, however, were the Alari. Humanoid in form but utterly devoid of empathy. The Alari were the self-proclaimed architects of the Concord. They had bioengineered their species over millennia to eliminate pain, desire, and emotion. They saw themselves as the peak of rational evolution. Their leader, Archivist Vel, once famously said, "Emotion is a virus. Only logic persists." When humanity proposed a genetic technology partnership with the Concord, the Alari laughed. "Human DNA? Full of flaws. Mutable. Illogical," Vel said, sneering through her pristine silver mask. "Your biology is a war zone of contradictions. It is unfit for higher function." Dr. Juno Reyes, head of Earth's Bioadaptive Research Division, had clenched her fists behind her back. She said nothing then, but she remembered. Reyes wasn't tall or intimidating. She wore messy ponytails and oversized lab coats. But she was brilliant and stubborn. Her specialty was adaptive genome engineering, and she had a theory that humanity's genetic messiness was our greatest strength. Unlike the Alari, who locked themselves into one form over countless generations, humans had built immune systems that evolved rapidly, brains that could rewire under stress, and bodies that healed in wild, unpredictable ways. "They call it chaos," she once told her assistant Max. "I call it flexibility." 6 months later, everything changed. The Heliox plague broke out. It started in the outer colonies, then swept across Concord space like a tidal wave. The Heliox virus bypassed most known immune responses, targeting neurotissue and genetic memory banks. The Zaraki fell in droves. The Marthek dissolved into glittering puddles. And the Alari, immune to emotion but not to biology, found themselves completely vulnerable. Humanity, oddly, remained largely unaffected. Dr. Reyes and her team raced to isolate the difference. Working in an underground lab on Titan, they sequenced samples from infected Concord species and compared them to uninfected humans. The answer was in our junk DNA, the segments of genetic code other species had long since eliminated for being non-functional. But for humans, these sequences acted as wildcards, mutating under stress, generating new proteins, triggering bizarre but effective immune responses. We didn't have perfect systems. We had evolving ones. Max gawked at the screen. "You mean we're immune because our DNA doesn't know what the hell it's doing?" "Exactly," Reyes whispered. "And now we weaponize that." Their solution wasn't a vaccine. It was a gift. Human scientists engineered a retroviral gene pack, codenamed Project Lazarus, designed to inject a custom string of human junk DNA into infected Concord species. The pack was messy, unstable, beautiful. It taught alien bodies to change, adapt, mutate in real time. It turned the Alari's flawless code into something unpredictable and survivable. The Concord scoffed at first. The Alari refused to take it. "We do not infect ourselves with inferior code," said Archivist Vel, even as half her council lay twitching on biotables. But the virus kept spreading, and dying was not logical. The first Alari to accept Project Lazarus was a low-ranking engineer named Talon. He survived. His neural matrix adapted. His cognitive function returned. Within a week, his body began expressing emotional proteins long suppressed by centuries of Alari evolution. He cried when he saw his mother again. It caused a media sensation across Concord space. Then the floodgates opened. One by one, Concord species turned to the humans. Dr. Reyes stood before the Concord assembly again, not as a joke, but as a savior. "You called our DNA illogical," she said, facing Vel. "You were right. It's a symphony of contradictions. But in chaos, there's possibility. In emotion, there is resilience. Silence, then slow applause from every species. But it wasn't over. Something was happening to the Alari. Their bodies were changing in ways no one expected. Not just surviving, but becoming more human. And that was the beginning of something far bigger than a cure. Something that would make the Alari question everything they thought they knew about perfection. Something that would teach the galaxy to fear. Not our weakness, but our ability to evolve. Project Lazarus was no longer just a cure. It was a revolution in motion. The moment other Concord species saw the Alari begin to change, laugh, cry, even argue with one another for the first time in millennia, they lined up for injections. What began as desperation turned into curiosity. Then craving. The viral gene pack, designed by Dr. Reyes and her team, had a built-in quirk. It didn't just adapt the immune system. It adapted the brain's response patterns, catalyzing emotional pathways suppressed by centuries of genetic tampering. Aliens who had lived in sterile rationality were suddenly awash in sensation. Grief, love, fear, wonder. It was exhilarating. It was terrifying. And it didn't go unnoticed. A month into Lazarus distribution, factions began to emerge. One calling themselves the Biosovereigns publicly denounced the gene therapy as a violation of evolutionary autonomy. Human emotional programming is a virus, declared Lady Quell of the Zaraki Central Command. They did not cure us. They infected us with themselves. But the wave was unstoppable. Dr. Reyes returned to Earth with her team, exhausted but invigorated. For the first time, humans weren't seen as inferior. Far from it. Our clumsy, chaotic biology was not a flaw. It was an adaptive miracle. Genetic adaptability became a diplomatic currency. Reyes was invited to speak at 10 planetary councils in 2 weeks. Max joked, "You've become the galaxy's emotional messiah." But even as applause followed her from system to system, Reyes felt uneasy. She noticed inconsistencies in the post-Lazarus patients, some expressing volatile emotional swings, some developing erratic behavior. One Marthek attempted to merge with a starship hull, claiming it felt lonely without purpose. Then the disappearances began. 3 Alari vanished from a Lazarus rehabilitation station. Surveillance logs showed them walking into the forests of Viridium, 6 and never returning. A week later, a Zaraki pilot detonated his own ship during a supply drop to a frontier moon. "Something's wrong," Reyes murmured, staring at a neurogenetic scan. Max leaned over. "Define wrong." She highlighted a cluster of synaptic nodes. "These patterns, they're not just new. They're foreign. Lazarus didn't just awaken emotion. It's writing something into the brain. Something we didn't program." Back on Titan, Reyes reassembled the Lazarus lab. Samples were reanalyzed. They pulled viral residues from Alari bloodwork and cross-referenced sequences with baseline human genomes. That's when Reyes found it. Code that wasn't hers. "This sequence doesn't originate from any Earth species. Not even viral junk DNA," she said. "It looks inserted." "Inserted by who?" Max asked, his voice low. Reyes ran the database again. "I don't know. Maybe something that mutated in deep space. Or maybe something that was dormant in us this whole time." More reports flooded in. Some Concord citizens becoming erratic, others speaking in tongues or carving spirals into the ground. Then came the dreams. Dozens of Lazarus recipients, across multiple species, reported identical dreams. A dark sky splitting open, a voice whispering in forgotten languages, a figure made of shifting shadows reaching down from the stars. It wasn't just gene therapy anymore. It was communication. Reyes contacted Archivist Vel. The Alari leader, now visibly emotional and pale, appeared over the secure channel. "You said this would save us." "It did," Reyes said quietly. "It changed us. Too much. We feel things we don't understand. Half my council can't function. And there are voices." Vel's face twisted in something that looked like fear. "There's something in the code, Juno. Something that isn't you. Something that woke up." The Lazarus strain was not just adaptive. It was sentient, or being used by something sentient. That much was clear. Reyes now faced a terrifying possibility. In unlocking human adaptability and spreading it across the stars, she had unleashed a deeper layer of consciousness encoded within us. One humanity itself never knew existed. She needed answers. Reyes and Max journeyed to the ruins of Dome Station 9 on Mars. where Project Lazarus had first been conceptualized years ago. The facility had long been abandoned, but early genetic experiments had been archived there. They scoured storage cores and cryodrives. And in a long-forgotten prototype called Echo 0, they found it. Records of early Lazarus experiments run by Earth's military before it went civilian. Echo 0 had tapped into DNA fragments harvested from a black-site meteor crash in Siberia half a century ago, believed to be non-terrestrial in origin. The Lazarus core sequence wasn't fully human. Max dropped his datapad. We used alien DNA. Worse, Reyes said, staring at the ancient coding string now glowing on the screen. We used something older than the Concorde. Something waiting. And now, across the galaxy, species were awakening to thoughts that weren't their own. Reyes had cured the Concorde. But what had she infected it with? Outside the Martian dome, a storm raged across the dust. And above, in the orbit of Saturn, something ancient began to stir. The real battle hadn't started yet. But the galaxy had already changed, and it was too late to go back. The storm over Mars was only the beginning. Weeks passed, and the Lazarus effect deepened. Concorde citizens who had once lived within clean hierarchies and regulated emotions were now fracturing. Some blossomed. Artists emerged among the Ilari, and the Zaraki began composing music. Entire cultures ignited with sudden beauty. But others didn't adapt so gracefully. The bio-sovereigns staged a planetary coup on Velex, for claiming Lazarus was a form of psychological warfare. An assassination attempt on Dr. Reyes narrowly failed when a Martek courier, overcome with affection for her, intercepted the bomb and vaporized with it. Max was shaken. We gave them the key to survival. Why does it feel like we tore open the wrong door? Reyes had no answer. Then the visions began to manifest. Every Lazarus subject, regardless of species, age, or culture, started to draw the same symbol, a 7-pointed spiral. Psychiatrists, biologists, and xenophilosophers scrambled to understand its meaning, but no data could decode the compulsion. Until the message was broadcast. It wasn't on any frequency. It didn't come from any ship. But across every Neuralink species, a dream was simultaneously shared, deep, wordless, terrifying. A shape in the void. An intelligence that had waited in dormant code, scattered across biological worlds. Watching. Listening. It spoke through memory, through instinct, through the Lazarus string. We are the architects. You remember us now. Through your chaos we return. The Concorde panicked. All eyes turned to Earth, the accidental vector of awakening. The Concorde demanded answers. Was humanity a host? A servant of these so-called architects? Was this a trap millennia in the making? Reyes stood before the emergency assembly on Calyx 5, her voice steady despite the chaos. We didn't summon them. We merely adapted. And in doing so, we touched something older than understanding. You've doomed us, cried the Ilari delegate. You infected us with memory we were never meant to hold. No, Reyes said quietly. We evolved to remember. Max, pulling her aside after the hearing, said, This is spiraling. They're going to shut us out of the Concorde. Maybe worse. Reyes' eyes burned with conviction. Not if we prove that what we awakened can help us. Not hurt us. The key lay in the Lazarus strain itself. Reyes returned to Titan one final time, digging deeper than ever before. She built an interface, part organic, part neural net, and synchronized her mind with the core strain. It was a risk. Her body convulsed, flooded with vision, thought, and an alien warmth. She saw worlds in darkness. Stars shifting. Species rising and falling. The architects had existed before the Concorde. They were not gods. They were stewards of evolution, long-forgotten guides embedded in biology. Their consciousness lay dormant, coded into the chaos of adaptable DNA, waiting for a mind unstable enough to hear them. Humanity's very flaw had made us the vessel. She emerged from the trance changed. I know how to communicate with them, she told the assembly. Not through machines. Through emotion. Through story. Through shared memory. So the humans did something no Concorde species had ever done. They built a memory bridge. Not a machine, but a choir. A globe-spanning effort where every Lazarus subject sang, dreamed, remembered together. It was messy, glorious, painful, and it worked. The architects answered, not with weapons or invasion, but with knowledge. Ancient data poured into Earth's networks. Energy systems, medicine, terraforming tech, all dormant, waiting for the right synaptic signature to unlock. The Concorde reeled. Earth was no longer a backwater species. We were the evolutionary trigger, the spark the architects had hidden in flesh. The bio-sovereigns tried to destroy the bridge. Failed. Some joined it. And then came the choice. Each species could reject the Lazarus Code, return to their old ways, or evolve, embrace chaos, emotion, potential. Most chose evolution. A decade passed. The Concorde became something new. Not just an alliance, but a living organism of shared change. The Ilari, once sterile, now wrote poetry. The Marthek danced in the light. Zaraki painters reimagined the stars. And humans? We were no longer mocked. We were no longer the joke. We were the blueprint. Dr. Reyes retired quietly to a garden dome on Europa. Max visited often. One day, as he brought tea, he asked her the question people still whispered. "Do you think the architects are still watching us?" She smiled gently. "I think they were never gods. Just very old scientists. And now we're continuing their work." A pause. "Do you regret it?" Reyes looked out at the alien flowers blooming in earth-grown soil. "No. They laughed at our weakness, Max. But they forgot that weakness is just the beginning of change." She sipped her tea. And far above, in the deep places between stars, something ancient smiled back.